Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have Petals. So, Petals is by Shadow Swimmer 77, yet again.
You saying it like that?
Say
Petals?
Petals.
You do very hard T's.
Because every time I say petals, it sounds like I'm saying petals as in like pedal to the metal.
Oh. I mean, fair enough.
But yeah. Unlike flower.
You mean it isn't about cars? Jeez.
No.
Did I read the right story?
I also have a very
I thought it was bicycles, honestly.
Also, just like personally, I do actually have a problem like spelling. Like when I go to spell petals, I always spell it with a D by accident the first time, and then I'll like go back and it's like, oh shit, no, that's gotta be a T.
Yeah, honestly, the way you say it is the way that I should be saying it. So I'm gonna attempt to do that from now on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Glad we had this. But yeah, so Petals is by Shadow Swimmer 77 on creepypasta.wiki. And just as a quick note for this story was part of a 2015 creepypasta freestyle competition. And there's apparently like a full like list of the entries and stuff like that. And the subject for this story was uncontrollable rage. So
that tracks.
Yeah. But we'll find out why. And before we begin, or before we dive too far into Petals, let's do our initial recommendations. I'm gonna partially recommend this story.
I'm gonna recommend it.
I am also going to recommend it. What the fuck's wrong with you, cultist?
I'll explain why in my thoughts.
All right.
But I suppose we'll move on to the rundown featuring The Rock. Except it's not The Rock because the character's named.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe and Sandra Sandoval, their marriage has been hitting a rough patch for a while, and Joe, with Joe working late and whatnot, having not a lot of time for his wife. So one day Joe decides to try and remedy this by coming home early with some flowers. He goes to a flower shop where the clerk is a bit surprised and even hiding the fact that she's afraid of Joe. And it seems like she knows exactly what he wants for flowers, despite Joe only like the last time Joe was at this flower shop was 6 months ago. As this exchange goes on with the clerk getting the flowers ready, and then Joe discovers from her that he was here not an hour ago with the same order, and B, he is covered in what looks like blood. Frantically, Joe leaves and feels he has to get home quickly. As he pulls into the driveway, his perspective becomes cross-referenced with Joe from an hour ago, so past Joe versus now Joe, where he also brought flowers home back in the past. So the house now is quiet compared to earlier when there was talking and laughing in the home. He gets to his bedroom and calls out to his wife with no reply, and blood splattered about, and an old bouquet from an hour ago dropped to the floor. Finn. So, I suppose we'll move on to everyone tolerates the grammar inquisitions. At this point, I've got a couple here. I think this might be the reason for my partial recommendations, honestly, is part of the grammar inquisition here. But so I'm going to start with this part here. Sandra was pissed at him for working late again. She'd made that much clear when he'd rolled in past 10 last night. Who is she, Joe? Who is who? The woman you're screwing. So the dialogue is separate. Oh yeah, so this is dialogue part here. The dialogue is separated by spaces and italics.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like it should have had quotations around where the dialogue was, like "Who is she, Joe?" quote end quote, quote "Who is who?" end quote, "The woman you're screwing," quote end quote.
Because there's quotes elsewhere in the story.
Yeah, but for some reason in this section it's it's just separated by space, which is fine. Like that's a perfectly valid way to do it. But also, for some reason, instead of using quotes, the writer used italics to differentiate a dialogue. And I feel like it's just becoming an old bit now for that we're doing, like just a dead horse that we just keep kicking. But like, why use italics rather than quotations for
It
this
might be
dialogue?
italics because he's remembering that.
Maybe.
Because
Yeah.
right after that,
Yeah.
he's like,
And you see, actually,
she'd gone to bed shortly after that.
yeah, and you see, this is the problem I have also with the start of the story, which is actually going to blend into my next comment here. So here's the quote.
Actually, before you do that, I'm
Yeah.
going to say 100% confirmed it is recollection of previously because it says
No, it is.
Sandra was so technically it's fine.
I
Right?
still hate it.
Me
Like,
too.
I still wish for quotations. Like, and here's the reason why, because and let me just get through my next comments
Okay.
and quotes and stuff. That's all this thing needed. A little TLC and some good old-fashioned romance. So flowers. The girl behind the counter looked up when she heard the bell, her face flitting quickly from smile to confusion to fear before settling on a smile again, perhaps a little more sickly than before. And at the very start of the story, we get this. The bell on the door chimed softly as Joe entered the small flower shop. Sandra was pissed at him for working late again. She'd made that much clear when he'd rolled in past 10 last night. So for the entire first page of this story, like when I put it over to Google Docs and stuff to do my notes and stuff, I had thought that Joe and Sandra's house was on the second floor of a flower shop that Sandra ran, and not that Joe was going out to get flowers on account of upsetting his wife. Like, it blended too well with the context of the scene that I did not realize that it was a flashback scene within a present scene.
You know what?
And I feel like it could easily be clarified if the first sentence was of this story, like that, like him, like the door, like him going into the flower shop and stuff, had been placed right after Joe gets the idea to get flowers for his wife.
So
That would have fixed everything.
Here's something else.
Sure.
A little BTS moment here behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
Normally, I am the one
Yes.
who reads these last second, and I more often than not miss glaring things that are like very obvious to most people, and then to me in my weird brain, I see it in a weird way, and everyone laughs. This time, I read it ahead of time. And Cultus was the one that read it last second.
I read it the day. I didn't read it like hours before. Like I read it like I had more than ample time to read it, and it was only like 3 or 4 pages. So like I did take my time to read it.
I'm just saying.
But no, you're right. Like it is. There is a commonality there.
Has the highest chance of close.
There is a potential commonality there. But like, yeah, like, but I do feel like this story that this whole confusion could be clarified if you removed the first sentence that like has him in the present day and have the story start with the flashback of like him pissing off his wife and then like deciding to get flowers, and then right after he gets the idea to get flowers, put that sentence that was at the very top and put it there where like he's entering the flower shop and the door rings and stuff like that. That would make it so much clearer that like the previous thing was something that came before this, and so we don't get this somebody like me who just is reading the story and like for some reason I'm gamer in yellow today. Yeah. I'm the cultist in yellow.
Yeah.
Doesn't that just make me a cultist to the king in yellow now?
Hell yes. Am I the review gamer?
Oh my god.
Just take a generic like game reviewer and that's how I look like
now. Yeah. But yeah, like I do like I immediately thought, I was like, oh my god, I just had a gamer moment. But at the same time, I was like, but this could also just be easily fixed if that first sentence wasn't at the very top of the story and was like.
Could also be fixed this way too.
Okay.
The bell on the door chimed softly as Joe entered the small flower shop to buy flowers for his wife, Sandra, who was pissed at him for working late again.
Yeah, that would have helped transition to like the flashback.
Yeah, it's saying the reason he's there is to buy flowers, not because him entering the flower shop isn't where Sandra is necessarily.
But like when I first read it, I was like, it sounded so it fits so well. I was just like, okay, so like I got the context. Like they live in, like Sandra owns this flower shop, and then she stormed upstairs to their apartment that's on the second floor.
Mm-hmm. The other way to correct it is leave the first sentence alone and change the second one. So it would be Sandra was pissed at him for working late again, hence why he's at the flower shop.
Yeah.
Or he's at, something like that. Something to connect the reason he's there to the flower shop isn't to see Sandra, it's to get something.
Yeah, I think the thing is just there wasn't enough like segue between the present and the past.
Yeah.
So.
And you are the one who is all about tense, so you're the tense individual.
Yep. Welcome to my tense talk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was my big issue with the story, and then or a big issue like grammar wise. But then I have this last thing here. Making his way up the walk, he noticed that before Joe carried flowers in his hand, much the same way that now Joe did. So this is just a suggestion, because this bugged me when I read this. I get getting confused over it. Maybe put apparently quotations are the thing of the day, for the correction of the day. But put quotations around before Joe and now Joe, because that is like a title for Joe in the past and in the present.
That's why it's capitalized, because it's a name.
Yeah, but like I still like read it like now that before Joe, like not
I'll
before
be honest,
Joe.
the first time I read that, I had to go back over it, and then I realized what was going on. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But
I just like
an even cleaner way to do it would be to say past and present Joe.
Yeah,
because
before
you're not using words that you would be potentially using in the middle of a sentence anyways.
You're goddamn right. Like, to quote Walter White, you're goddamn right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my biggest problem right there is that, like, before Joe, like, just use past Joe or present Joe. Like, before Joe and now Joe, like, it's a little too confusing for like a dumb reader like me. Like, or again, like if you're dead set on keeping before Joe and now Joe, then maybe put quotations around them so that like it's like kind of like before Joe. I'm doing quotation fingers on an audio form podcast.
Fine, I'm sure it comes through.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's my grammar inquisition. Really, it's just like the beginning kind of threw me off. And then like just like other little things kind of threw me off with quotations and such. So
now before Joe could go into the room that he was in before, now Joe has to go before he can. Yeah, like,
God,
like,
I hate it. I hate that so much.
Yeah.
But Mikey, these stands for evil.
I have a conjunction junction.
Ooh.
And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
It's requiring more time and effort than Bob anticipated when he signed us up for the damn thing. So, flowers. But you know how it goes. These darn flowers don't last forever. Ha ha! And if you could make it up with some of those filler and bows and whatnot, it'll be just a minute. It was maybe a little harder than it should be because of the odd bruise across the back of his hand. It must not have been that long ago, because although the light in the sky had not yet begun to die in the vision of before, the black truck he didn't recognize was still parked at the end of the driveway. Finn.
I mean, some of those were dialogue, but
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically just like kind of a succinct
in these stories.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, that's very true. Like there was no quotations and stuff like that. So how can you tell if it's dialogue or not?
Also, that's the whole point that Mikey does these. He grabs the sentences that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ends, or buts, because there's always better words to use, and he puts those sentences into a story, which sometimes comes out with hilarious results.
Yeah, they either make it succinct version of the rundown, or
Yeah.
they come up with something fantastically hilarious, like it came at us at full force. It was a squirrel.
Yeah, which was
I-
you're like your
Yeah.
opus. Your
Yeah,
magnum
that was
opus.
that was literally the start of it.
Yes.
But yeah,
But with this one, it basically shifted around to make it seem like Joe was the florist, and he was just
Yeah.
like putting together some like a bouquet for someone.
and he
That's
could, but
about
he was
it.
having trouble with it because he had like just beaten somebody because his like knuckles were raw, or like there was a gash on the back of his hand or something.
Yeah, and like the unfamiliar truck is just the guy who was coming in to buy flowers.
Yeah.
Like it's just super mundane.
Mhm.
I mean, technically the story itself is super mundane.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's basically just like I'll get to it in my actual thoughts about
Yeah.
what I realized what the story was about and such.
Mhm.
But yeah, gamer in yellow, you're grammar in yellow.
No, it's not. It's your turn actually,
All right, on to actual thoughts.
because I have no thoughts. My brain is off.
You are a shiny, smooth brain.
Yep.
No. Moving on to the image. It's all right. It shows red petals falling over a dark black backdrop, which doesn't really give anything away, but has this kind of abstract vagary that and it has something connected to the title, but it doesn't say exactly, like, doesn't like convey anything meaningfully, like
No spoilers.
yeah, meaningfully spoilery about the story that you're about to watch. So, but to read, other than the fact that other than the fact that there are petals involved.
And
So
loosely so as well. Like it's not even
Yeah.
directly connected to it. They're just
Yeah.
there.
it's just like it's showing like yeah, just showing like flowers falling and stuff like that, much like and we do kind of have a scene in the story where like flowers fall, so it works, but it's vague enough that it fits.
Yep.
But I'll move on to the next thing I have. Hello, Mr. Sandoval. What can I help you with? Well, was there something wrong with your purchase? Joe was surprised. He'd been in this shop before, but it must have been 6 months ago or longer, probably longer, if he had to wager a guess. Okay, so at this point, before I read ahead or kept reading and got more about the story, more context from the story, I was wondering if this was going to involve a doppelganger or like a second Joe that had come in earlier. Which
Yeah.
would have been funny if that had been the case, because I'm diving back into Alan Wake in preparation for the second game that's coming out soon, and that game deals with a titular character having an evil copy, or like or in some aspects of the story, like there is like an evil, or like somebody wearing Alan's face and doing things called Mr. Scratch in Alan Wake. So it was almost a connective tissues time before I read the rest of the story. But yeah, I like right off the get, I was like, okay, so maybe we're dealing with like a doppelganger, or like a mirror version of the character that showed up or something, or like some kind of time displacement. And like that idea aside, as I kept reading, I did like how it was addressing this betrayal of memory for the character, like how they just repeated something they had done like prior after a traumatic event, as their mind attempted to shield them from the horror of their personal reality. Like he didn't realize when he walked into that flower shop that he was covered in blood until like he started seeing like the reaction from people around him. Like his own like personal delusions or like personal reality was being like slowly peeled away as he like interacted with other people outside of his reality. So I really liked how like, and it kind of peeled away some of the falsehoods of his memory and gave us a little more inklings of truth with each passing sentence.
Yeah, the sand hit only lasts so long.
Yeah, or like he just kept, or like he failed in one big sand hit like initially, and then he just kept starting to roll will saves to basically try and start regaining some of his old memories as like things kept popping up. Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate that. And then next thing I have here, this so as I was reading the story, I got to this part here. Entering and making his way down the hallway, dodging the strewn piles of clothing that had been there before, Joe was struck by the quiet emptiness of now. Before, there had been noises of talking and laughing and other things. And at this exact moment, I was like, oh, the wife was having an affair. Joe in the past walked in on them when he came home early. And like, just the scene description here, like, conveyed that to me. And like, of like, there had been talking and laughing and something else before in the home. As Joe walked inside, it immediately made me think of and I don't know if this is because like I've seen this exact same scene. Like, it conveys it really well in the story with the subtle like kind of like the subtle like sentence or like little like mini paragraph. But it's also because I've seen that exact scene in various movies where the spouse comes home early and to surprise their partner who they've been on the ropes with, and it turns out that their spouse or their partner is having an affair, and that they're making love and whatnot, like while the spouse is off at work. And so when the character comes home early, then we usually get the revelation like of like what happened here.
Yep. Funny too, considering the early part, she was like, she said she was accusing him of cheating.
Exactly. Yeah. It's actually kind of like
basically.
Yeah, basically, like, she doth protest too much. Like like, oh, you're like, basically she was like kind of like projecting her own guilt onto Joe. And like, I think it's also because like, oh, we just brought that up. Yeah, but the longstanding the strain in the relationship and such. But yeah, it was like that one line, like as soon as like she enters the home and then like seeing like it was quiet now, but before there had been noises of talking and laughing and other things. And I was like, oh fuck, I know exactly what's coming up. And then we get this at the very end. Looking down, he could see a dark stain had spread across the carpet where he was standing, punctuated here and there by petals torn from a bouquet strewn in the corner of the hallway where it had been dropped. The dying light was too dim to tell, but he knew they were red. Sandy? He whispered her name as if in prayer. Only silence answered. And like at the end here, I was like, partially at the end here, I was like, oh, fuck off, really? Like, we get no definitive confirmation of what's happening. Like, we all know, but I guess like thinking back on it, like we all know what's happening here. Like, it's
not
left...
ketchup on them.
No, it's not ketchup on them. Clearly, like we can. I don't even think it's really an assumption. We can kind of like correlate with the hints that have been given that he came home an hour before with flowers, found his wife cheating on him, and murdered her, and then his mind shielded him from that truth that he had, or from
both of them?
Probably because
the other guy's car was still there.
Oh my god, I just realized. Yeah, no, they're both. Also, that's also the hint, like because there's a black car across the road, or like
it was in his driveway.
Oh, it's in his Yeah, then 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally missed that hint, but yeah, that's another hint that like so they're both dead in the bed because of what Joe has done.
Because the music kicked in again.
Yeah, dude. And then he realized what he had done, and so his mind just like, no, just let's rewind reality for a second. You gotta go get some flowers for your wife and surprise her when you go home early.
Let's load that quick save and try that again.
Yeah, except it's just in his
work.
Yeah, except it's just in his head. So he's just repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like the ending here, it's like, to me initially when I read the story, it was like a little too vague because like my comment was, "Oh, fuck off, really?" Like that was literally my note, my thought when I first read it. Going back to it now and like addressing it here, I'm like, you know what? That's not as bad as I thought it was. It's actually kind of like a fun. It's a nice like inconclusive, like it's all but confirmed what has happened here, and you kind of get it in the context of the story. It doesn't give me as much creepypasta blue balls as I thought it had.
Yeah.
Which is what I literally wrote in my notes.
PPPB is a serious condition.
Yeah. Also, as far as the like the subject of the story, like for this competition thing, uncontrolled anger, spot on. Like, because this story hints at that murder of the wife and presumably the lover as well, in a blind rage, and then unconsciously repeated the last nice sense of normalcy he had to try to cope. Like that's how I see it, and like that's chef's kiss on actually on the theming tied to the actual story context and like how it was conveyed in the story.
You know what I just thought of?
Hmm?
And I'm sorry if either of you have this as an option too. If so, take out mine because you thought of it first. It would be really cool if the ending was him just looking at his watch and being like, "Crap, I should go out and get some flowers for her." Like just having it recycle all over.
It just keeps repeating, and then that's like the third time around is when he gets arrested.
Probably, yeah.
Presumably, yeah. Or the store is closed. It's like, why is the store closed? It's like only like, yeah, it's only 3:00. Like he thinks it's
cops outside the store.
Why are they
approaching my vehicle?
Why are they got their guns drawn? Oh my god!
Why am I on my face on the floor now?
Why are they tasing me, bro?
Hello, officer. How?
Yeah,
it's like tasing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it like wow, it's just like that would actually be a like the ending here, like it is good, but like it would be interesting if he just like we got a little bit extra of like only silence answered, and then like a few minutes later Joe was walking back to his car, getting in his like to go get flowers to surprise his wife. Like that would have been perfect.
Written as if like it's completely normal, like
yeah.
It's getting late in the day. I should hurry over there before the store closes.
Yeah. Like that's like the last paragraph a little bit is like just like suddenly it's just like it's recycling again, like his mind. It's like, nope, let's reboot that again. Let's try that again. Because that's also a good way of like, well, I mean, the subject is uncontrolled rage, but that would also be like a good sense of like insanity, because like insanity is just repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
But no, that is that would be really good. That's a really good one, Gamer.
I did it.
Yeah. Mikey, did you have that idea in your notes?
No, I did not.
Congrats, Gamer. It stays in.
Yay, it's mine.
I'm keeping all that in. I'm keeping all that in. Like us, like it's like. By the way, you like remove this if it doesn't. If you guys have this note, I'm keeping all that in.
Yeah, that's fair.
But all right. Well, Mikey, these stands for evil. I'm done with my actual thoughts. So, what's your actual thoughts?
All right. So I have a quote near the beginning that we've already said, but I'll say it anyway. Who is she, Joe? Who is who? The woman you're screwing. So for me, this being like at the very beginning of the story, this is classic projection.
Did you really?
Did
you caught on that fast? Jesus.
Yeah. So usually you accuse someone of cheating if you're the one cheating, because you
Mikey,
want to justify that your cheating is valid type thing.
Mikey, be honest. Did you actually catch it that early, or like after you read the story?
I caught it that early, but I didn't know where the story was going to go with it. So
okay. He's just smarter than us.
That's well, he is on a higher plane of existence as a cosmic demon. So
yeah, he's lived so many more lifetimes than we have. So it's understandable that he is so much smarter than us.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. So, and then, as always, I would have liked if there was a supernatural angle to this. But I couldn't find one other than maybe the rage is doing something, but then it sounded like he took a hit to the head, so he probably forgot the last hour.
Yeah, I think I feel like it's fine to be mundane as it is, because I think this is a very like like this honestly like doesn't feel like there's any like plot holes of like, no, this is a very valid reaction as to like the scenario. Like, so I think it might cheapen it if it was supernatural element. That said, this is on the list for the for Shadow Swimmer's Wicker Saga series, which has invariably been a lot of supernatural stories. So it's peculiar that this one is like right after this, like this in the listing that's on Shadow Swimmer's page for the Wicker Saga. This is right after The Soldier, which we covered last week. So it's like it is peculiar that this one comes right after, like, it's a completely mundane and rational horror story compared to the supernatural mindfuck we got last time.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
There was some like overlay of like visions and stuff. Like there could have been something actually fucking with him to cause him to do this.
Yeah, at the same time though, I kind of hope it isn't, because like this works on its own as a mundane horror story.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
But
and the rest of my comment is that the fact that it's real life horror is fine, because that makes it more rooted in reality, which can in fact make it more horrifying.
Immersion.
Yeah, hell is other people, and like that. Sometimes the scariest monsters are human.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I think it's also because like we can relate to it so well. like this kind of like we see this kind of stuff in the news. Like that's what, like, this could literally have been like been something like the accounts from a news report.
Yeah, and there's no supernatural safety blanket.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God, what would a supernatural safety blanket look like?
Probably like a +4 safety blanket, like, and just increases the person's likelihood of being safe while wearing the safety blanket. It's just like a subtle it's just an idiosyncratic magic. Like it's just a subtle a subtle magic that doesn't really outwardly like have any theatrics. It's just the person is like Domino from Deadpool. Like she's just her superpower. She's lucky.
Yeah.
So as long as you're wearing this +4 safety blanket, you're just like Domino lucky.
No, it's basically Linus from Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got a safety blanket.
Yep. But
anyway,
yeah.
That's into my actual thoughts.
Okay. Gamer.
That's me. So one thing I noticed on recording here, I didn't have a note on. Joe's last name is Sandoval?
Yeah.
Sandoval? Which I thought was the exact name of the cybernetic from Cyberpunk 2077 that slows down time, but that's Sandevistan. But it was close.
Yeah.
If it was the exact same thing, it's like, oh god, okay, he went into like bullet time mode during that rage. But no. Or this just takes place in the Cyberpunk 2077.
I mean, this could be. He could literally be suffering from cyberpsychosis.
Yeah, that's true. He could.
Which is hella creepypasta-esque in that game.
Definitely.
For anybody for context, cyberpsychosis is like a series of cases that you can find in the Cyberpunk 2077 video game, where basically people are just going crazy, like murderously, sadistically, and even occultishly crazy as a result of their implants and stuff like that. It's like
their brains are like rejecting the cybernetics. Yeah,
and causing delusions and suicide, like homicidal like tendencies, and it's like it's like an enigmatic condition as a result of like long-term human use of cybernetics.
Yes. But I'll move on from there.
Yes.
My first note is just this quote here. They'd grown up together, and Sandra was the first girl he'd ever really fallen for. Right around the time most boys stopped viewing girls as vectors for the dreaded cootie virus, and instead as objects of vague worship and perhaps abject terror. I love the wording of that.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. It's so poetic.
Yes.
Like, yeah, because like the vectors for the cootie virus, like, yeah, that's like what, yeah, like that's exactly how boys would see that. And then like the objects of vague worship and also abject terror is like, nope, yeah, that also fits teens. Like, yeah,
that's so good.
I feel as three guys, we can kind of all relate to that, like that switch.
Yep. But the next one is at the flower shop, where Veronica says, "Mr. Sandoval, you were here maybe an hour ago, and there's something on you, all over you, something red." So because she didn't say blood, I didn't know what to assume at this point, because it could have been goddamn anything.
It could have been
Like
you said earlier.
yeah, like I feel like Victoria would just is it Victoria or Veronica?
I thought
It's Veronica. I wrote down the wrong one. Veronica. Because like I feel like Veronica would just say blood if it was blood, right?
well, maybe she also doesn't want to believe the worst. So she's like just say like, "Oh, you've got red on you."
Yeah, like it's like she's saying it specifically because she knows she has to hold off so the reader doesn't get clued in too early.
Or she's trying to she doesn't want to say blood because that might trigger Mr. Sandoval into like murdering her. So she's trying to like say just like try and say some placating things while she goes for the phone to call the cops.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like she doesn't know what it is.
No, yeah.
But the vibe she gave was that she didn't. Like, because the blood word is avoided so unnaturally, for all we know, he has some red slime monster that's like puppeting him or something at this point. Because
it's just carnage.
Something red on him. Yeah, could be. Who knows? Now this is in the Marvel universe. This could be placed anywhere. Yeah, best case scenario. Veronica's freaking out and not thinking right due to fear and such. And but like also by the end of that conversation, it sounded like Joe's visual was getting worse and worse. Like whatever creature this was consuming him or raising up behind him or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because like she just kept freaking out more and more as time went on, and it made me feel like his visual was getting worse. So it gave me supernatural vibes right off the get go, and then it didn't do that, which is fine. But yeah,
because it could go like you could have your visual, but like or it could go more mundane. It's just his sudden perception of reality is slowly peeling away as the reactions from people, the person around, like person next to him, is like reacting to him, and like as an unbiased observer of him.
But the rationale that I settled on was just that over time, Veronica's mind was putting more and more possible scenarios together of what happened, freaking her out more and more.
That could be
about her life and such.
Yeah.
So by the end of that whole note, I'll give a pass on this whole area, basically. But that's my thought process as I went through it. Because it makes sense, because like she's freaking out and may not want to trigger him, as you said, or because she's not thinking right, she just says there's some red on you instead of saying you're covered in blood, sir, get the fuck out. You know,
like, sir.
Yeah,
I need to call the cops, sir.
Her name's Veronica, not Karen.
Yeah, it's like, or we need to call an ambulance. Is that your blood? I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then either way, all that stuff happens. Joe leaves the store, gets in his car, and drives home. Why? His first order of business should be to get to a mirror. Because, like, if Veronica's terrified of him, so is his wife. The flower shop no doubt has a windowed storefront, so there'll be reflections there. And if not, his car has a rear view mirror, 2 side mirrors, and 2 sun visor mirrors. 1 to 2 side sun visor mirrors.
Yeah.
So he's surrounded by mirrors as he's driving home. Granted, I know you want to cut me off. Granted,
I'm trying to. Gamer, be proud of me. I'm trying to stop myself.
Granted, he is very confused by Veronica's attitude towards him, but wouldn't that just double down your need to check yourself? Like, in hindsight, anyone in his right mind would do these things, yes, but he's not in his right mind right now. He's in his left mind.
Yeah. Exactly.
So again, pass.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like my rebuttal would be that, like, well, he's like, some people, even in this state of mind, like some people would be like paranoid and check themselves and stuff like that. But everything I've read so far of Joe is that he likes to deny. So he's probably like trying. His mind is. It might even be just a subconscious thing. His mind is just telling us like everything is fine. Everything's fine. Everything is fucking fine.
Yes, and as I said, like by the end of it, it makes sense that he wouldn't bother because he's kind of nuts at that point.
Oh,
But
God.
the way that his dialogue and mannerisms is at the time of that section, he seemed like he was a normal functioning dude.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm like, why won't he look at himself? Someone just said someone's afraid of him and says he's covered in red. Why would you not look at yourself?
Yeah.
But in hindsight, that anger eventually went away when, yes, he's nuts at this point.
Yeah. I just realized he's that dog in the burning building of that meme, of that online meme. It's like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Except there needs to be a new picture of that, either like commissioned by Casey Green or like maybe I'll do it. I'll draw it of the dog in like bloodied and like with a bouquet of flowers in a car. It's just like, this is fine.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
But then we move on to the driveway, and actually I kind of talked about this, like when we saw the double vision and the unknown truck in the driveway. Right there was 99% confirmation that he killed his wife and he's covered in blood. So to that point, the ending was kind of visible a mile away.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it could have stopped with the vision of past Joe walking into the house with the unknown truck there, because we would get it at that point.
See, I think it's... See, I at first I wanted more, but honestly, I think I'm fine with it as is, because it's like, it ends at just a moment where he's like we at this, like, yes, a little bit earlier, but at this point you want to go through the motions a little bit to like have the character realize what's happening.
Yes. And I'm not saying it should have stopped earlier. I'm saying it could have stopped earlier, and that would have been fine. It went on a little after that, but it wasn't to a point where it was like, yeah, I get it, just let him get there, like it was. It still got there at a natural kind of length, so I was still fine with it.
Yeah. Speaking of kicking dead horses, it's like we get it. He killed his wife.
Mm-hmm. But that's the end of my notes.
Okay. Then I suppose we'll move on to final thoughts. I'm still going to partially recommend this, though probably on the higher end. There's definitely some things for me I believe need to be fixed or tweaked for clarity. But otherwise, like it really hammers home the subject it was going for, of like uncontrolled rage. Like that definitely comes across in this story by the end. And it's like, okay, no, this is good. But I definitely think like between the very beginning part, like just that could maybe be tweaked a little bit for clarity. And please use quotations for dialogue.
Quotations, use them all the time.
Yeah, for dialogue.
99% sure that the first part wasn't quotated. Said whatever. I'll say it again. Quotated. I don't know if it was quotated because it's probably meant to be memory, but in a memory, it's dialogue in a memory.
Yeah.
So it would still be quotated, right?
Yeah. I don't know if that's actually the accurate version, but sure, we'll go with it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Somebody can grammar Nazi us.
I also don't care.
Yeah, that's fair.
English is confusing enough as it is, so I might as well just add to the confusion. Embrace the chaos.
Yep. Okay, there, dragon.
Hell yeah. They are bluish yellow. They're the closest ones.
Yeah, they do have gold. They do have yellow and green as like their main colors. So
hell yeah.
But back to the story. Otherwise, like the story is really good, like for conveying what it's trying to get across, like as a theme. It's just that first part really kind of threw me off. I was like, is this what gamer feels like sometimes?
Yep.
But
I feel your pain on a weekly basis more often than not.
Yeah. But so Mikey, these stands for evil. Your verdict.
Well, while I caught on to the cheating aspect really early on, I still wanted to know how the flowers and petals worked into it, and the dozen roses worked fairly well. Especially when you get to the end scene where there's petals everywhere.
Yeah.
Because the bouquet had an explosion that we don't know about.
Well, I feel like maybe it shouldn't have said like that. It was dropped, like that. It was like just whipped across the hallway and just like exploded
Yeah.
off the wall or something because he's like
Yeah.
in such a fury. But
Yeah. But overall, it's a quick read. It has real world horror, which can be quite horrifying. So I'm going to recommend it.
okay, gamer.
For me, the story flowed well, like let off of a Joe's back, basically. Originally, I had this at a partial because it bothered me that the florist didn't just say he's covered in blood, and that Joe didn't seem to give a shit about making sure he looks okay to go see his wife. But again, in hindsight, Joe is insane at that point, not thinking correctly. And even though all the dialogue sounds like he's acting, talking, and thinking correctly, he isn't. That being said, it was a bit annoying that Veronica or Victoria, I wrote down both. Veronica. That Veronica didn't outright say blood, but it truly wasn't enough to warrant a partial recommendation on this. Because the story was good. I liked it. It was a good quick read and no notes. Any problems I had with the story were swiftly finished or clarified by the end. Which is one of the few times this has happened, because a lot of the times like I bring up an issue and like it's an issue and it's going to stay an issue the whole time. But like every single time where I had something that bothered me, the ending justified it. Granted, the justification is he's nuts, which at that point anything could be justified that he does. So I don't know if that's cheat or not, but
No, because this is also kind of a psychological horror because like he can't trust his own mind because it's broken suddenly because of the trauma that he's inflicted on himself and on his wife. He's inflicted physical trauma and death to his wife and presumably her lover. And then he's also suffered he's also caused emotional and mental scarring and trauma to himself in the process of doing that. So
It's having a bad day.
Yeah. No, this another story, another title for the story could be Joe's No Good Very Bad Day. But
he was just trying to be a nice guy.
Yeah. He was just trying to repair his failing marriage, and then things got out of hand.
A little bit. Well, a lot of it, actually. I can't even.
Yeah, no. I think we can all agree he does need to go to jail, but.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah. So I guess that'll do for this week's episode. So still like high end partial recommendation. Just like the story needs some tweaks, but I did enjoy the story, and
I do agree with your viewpoint. Those tweaks would help it a lot. So don't worry, you're not also insane. Okay, cool. And then 2 full recommendations from my co-hosts. So, yeah. That has been this week's episode. If you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. You can also talk to us on Twitter. Mikey is at the E stands for evil. The Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow, but without that W at the end because his name is very long. I don't have a choice at this point.
Yeah. And I'm at Review Cultist. You can also send us emails at aldentebrigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah. And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. Look up Al Dente Rigor Mortis and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tiers with special episodes, early access, extra content. And to our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely, because you're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to the listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. And without the stories that you write and post online for people to enjoy, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. The E stands for evil.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigor Mortis. Sleep well.